And then as we get closer to 9, I will sort of start us off and call the meeting to order. And immediately after I begin, I'll do the process to help hand it over to you, Brenda, as well. Great. Everyone's doing well today. Nice to see you all. Good morning, Maritas.
Good morning, everyone. We made it to Friday.
Indeed.
Hi, Kelly. I need to go to Topeka and have coffee with you sometime or lunch.
That sounds great.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get our recording starting and we'll get going. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lindsay O'Ryan. I'm a research project manager at the KU Center for Public Partnerships and Research. I know many of our panel members know my face and my emails. I serve in a support role to help support you all in your role on the Early Childhood Recommendations panel. We are here today on Friday, August 16th, and I have the lovely role of just very quickly letting you know that our chair is unable to attend today. It's not a last minute. We knew this was going to be a conflict, but we are kind of moving forward with Robert's Rules of Orders to be a little bit more official. And rather than having me take over, we're going to ask one of our panel members to step in. So we've done a little bit of pre-work to make sure that the person who does that is not jumping in blind or not blind, but unprepared, and that they have the resources to do that. So on the screen, you'll see the information about the sort of rules of order for when we have an absent chairperson. And I will ask for a nomination from our panel members for someone who might be able to step in and fill that role. Again, we've done a little bit of pre-work, so.
This is Brenda Bandy, and I am happy to serve in that role. I guess I formally nominate myself, and I appreciate the preparation that you and Cornelia gave me ahead of time, so I will do my best.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brenda. So the next thing that we'll need to get the meeting moving is a motion to approve the chair pro tem as nominated. If someone could help us out with that.
This is Maritas. I move to approve Brenda as chair pro tem.
Wonderful. Do we have a second?
This is Natalie McLean. I'll second.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay, so we will go ahead and vote. All those in favor, please give a thumbs up, a hands up, virtual, or any way you want. Okay. Opposed, same sign, and I'll wait a second for those to clear out. Wonderful. Okay, so I will pass this over to Brenda, and thank you again for helping us out today.
Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate the support that you've given me before and during this meeting. That will be great. So first, I want to welcome everyone and thank you for serving on the recommendations panel. Just a reminder that because this is a remote meeting, it is being live streamed. So therefore, we ask that when you do comment that you introduce yourself and state your full name before you start speaking so that that is part of the record as well. So clearly identify yourself. The meeting materials are posted in the panel meeting webpage, so those are available as well. And please use the raise hand feature so that we know that you're ready to share during today's meeting. And just a reminder that this is being live streamed and recorded. Okay, so here's an overview of today's agenda, which you received in advance of today's meeting. So we've already been able to check off the first one, and we'll move on through this according to the slides. Next, Lindsay. Thank you. So the action item is for panel members. I get to please clearly identify yourself, but our first course of action is we need to approve the August agenda, which you received a copy of. So we will need a motion, a second, and we'll take a vote to approve the August agenda. Who would like to make a motion?
This is Amber Wheeler. I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Amber. Do we have a second to approve today's agenda?
Leanne Neal, I second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving today's agenda, please raise your hand or thumbs up. Thank you. All those opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion passes and we've approved today's agenda. Next order of business is the same process to approve July's minutes. There was a correction to the spelling of Chris Nicholson's name. So may we have a motion to approve the July minutes, please?
This is Karen McCrory. I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Karen. And a second?
This is Lisa Gehring, and I second.
Thank you, Lisa. All in favor of approving July minutes, raise your hand or thumbs up. Those opposed, same sign. Okay, the July minutes are approved. We've done our business. All right, now on to the fun stuff. We do have, for those of you who are new to the recommendations panel, we want to let you know that the public is invited to give comments to this panel to inform our work. And this is done through the Kansas Open Forum comment. And there's a process for this. By the day before our meetings, the public can submit written comments that will be shared with the panel, or they can have up to 3 minutes to provide verbal comments to this panel. And I believe, Lindsay, that no one has signed up for that for this meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, but just for those of you who are new, just know that this is an opportunity for people to give comments and inform our work. So if you happen to know someone who said, wow, I would love for the panel to know this, this is their chance to be able to inform and share information with us. So just wanted to let you know about the open forum comment. Next. Okay, it is my pleasure to introduce Sarah Gardner with the KU Center for Public Partnership and Research, who is going to take us through what it means to be a panel member.
Thank you, Brenda, and congratulations on getting the acronym right. Few people get the CPPR in order right the first time, so kudos, Brenda. As Brenda said, I'm Sarah Gardner. I'm with Lindsay and the team at CPPR. We provide backbone support for the Kansas Children's Cabinet, and we also provide backbone support for all of the preschool development grant funded activities, which is the funding source that our state uses to move forward a lot of our systems work. And so we're very glad to be able to have that role, and that is the hat. I'll talk about hats a little bit in my slides this morning, but that is the hat that I'm going to come to you all with to offer just some guidance, some tips and tricks, some ways to think about systems work, and some ways to think about your role as a panel member, as well as some ideas for things to try for this particular group. So Lindsay, you can move to the next slide. So I presented a little bit back to the group in, I think it was January. I don't know, time has been crazy. What is time anyway anymore? A little bit about systems change. And the reason I do that is because the panel is unique amongst the governance groups because it is focused on the broad brush system, the early childhood system. Your diversity in expertise, your diversity in where you come from in the state, your diversity in your subject matter expertise is your strength. So unlike other governance groups, which really focus on a very specific topic, you all kind of have the big, broad brushstroke of the early childhood system. And PS, that work is very hard. So I just wanted to just level set. A lot of folks come into the panel wanting to see change tomorrow, and systems change takes time. It's a it's the long game. I found this clip art, better living through clip art, as I like to say. I found this clip art of the baton appropriate, given the Olympics have ended, that you're passing the baton to those who come after you on the panel, and you're taking the baton from those who came before you on the panel. So very few people see the end outcomes of the things they are fighting for from a systems change perspective in their time in service. A lot of times it is the next round of folks, or even years from now, where you see the benefits and the fruits of that labor. So I just wanted to call your attention to that, and not to discourage a great conversation, but to just note that success on the panel may feel a little bit different than success within your organization or within another governance groups where there's very focused attention. So these are just a couple of notes. Danella Meadows is the matriarch of systems thinking, which seems like very esoteric kinds of thinking. She does a fantastic job of breaking it down. In a system, there are elements, which are the things that you notice the most. And they are, when you change an element, it really has the fewest effects. It's good to change elements, but they are often the end of the line of the work. And so we talk about going upstream, and the next step upstream in a system is the interconnections. That's you all. It's the relationships that move work forward. So your relationships with each other, your relationships with your community, with your organization, that interaction, that's real systems change right there. So we used to call them, when we were all in person, we used to call them the windshield time, and we used to call them the parking lot conversations. How many times man, I had that one chat with that one person, and sometimes, something magical happened and things got moving. So those are really important moments. And then purpose and function. So what's the function of this piece of the system? What's the purpose of this piece of the system? This is where you get into values and deeply held beliefs. And as those can shift and change, you see lots of ripples of change in systems. Also have on here Danella's iceberg model. We're all familiar with the iceberg model. It's used in lots of different ways of thinking, but for systems, the very top, the outcome is what we all celebrate. The work that happens, all the stuff underneath, is really what you all are doing on a day-to-day basis. And I just want to recognize and honor that that's really hard work that doesn't go noticed by many, but notice it amongst your peers and celebrate it and honor it amongst your peers. So thank you again for being on the panel and embarking on this very important work of changing our system and improving our system. The next slide, Lindsay. So I just wanted to offer some reflections on what does it mean to be a panel member? And I know many of you are returning panel members, but there are some new folks. So Lindsay and I were talking about, what are some tips and tricks to think about as you're listening to people like me present, as you're listening to Stephanie Parks later today present, to Brenda later present on the breastfeeding updates. What are some of the things you should be thinking about as you're hearing these challenges or these updates? So a couple things to think about as you come into the meeting is, what are the issues and challenges you're seeing within your work? What are the issues and challenges you're seeing within your community? Brenda shared the Kansas Open Forum. Yes, that is for folks who are not panel members to come and share, but there's no reason that you all cannot also submit into that open forum and represent your community or represent your organization with some of the challenges. We hold time for bright spots at the end. We also want to make sure that you have a space and there is a space to bring things that are kind of like, pebbles in your shoe, so to speak, the sticky wickets that just seem to fester. This is a place to bring those topics. Reflect on the hats you wear. I mentioned hats earlier. You may be thinking, what is the hat that I am wearing in this space? You talked about systems work, Sarah. I'm a member of an organization. I have subject matter expertise. I also live in a community. Those are not mutually exclusive things. Those are hats that you take on and off without even thinking about it. And we would encourage those hats in this space. So think about, as you're listening to presentations, I'll take Stephanie's presentation later today that you're going to hear about workforce updates. How does her update impact the community you live in? What is unique about your community related to that topic? Same thing with the job title you have, the sector you work in. I know everyone's in early childhood, but we have childcare providers. We have folks in pre-K and K-12 settings. We have folks doing advocacy, folks work at state agencies, community-based organizations where early childhood is a sliver of your work, and you're also doing supports for children and families more broadly. How does your job, your day-to-day, your day job impact the presentation topic that you're hearing? And then also, you all have passion. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have incredible passion for the work. And I would be interested to see the laundry list of educational and life experiences that you all bring to this. It's probably incredibly diverse. So how does that shape how you're interpreting the information, and how does that shape your reactions to it? So those are some things you can think about as you're hearing different presenters as we go throughout the year. It's not just absorbing it one way. It's think about what hat you have on and what you can do with that information because of that hat you have on. And then become familiar with the Kansas governance structure. I should have put a clip art of a Frankenstein. It's alive. It's meant to be alive, but it's up to the people within it to bring it to life. There is no evil doctor mastermind behind the scenes here. It's you all helping to bring it to have meaning. So that governance structure is on your SharePoint site. It's a resource linked there. So if you're unfamiliar with that SharePoint site, please reach out to Lindsay and she can help orient you to that site. But that is a place where how can you use those different governance groups to address things at the most appropriate level? So you guys might have issues or topics that come to you all as, again, the big systems group, and you may say, oh, this is really a childcare regulations issue, where this feels like something related very specific to childcare. We have a childcare systems improvement team. Some of you might also be on that governance group. They do fantastic work. They have the level of expertise needed to dive into that issue. Send that work to them, send that topic to them, send that concern to them, make them aware of it. Really leverage the governance structure up and down and always. So utilize the expertise that we have within our system, and don't feel like you all have to solve everything. You are the place for the most diverse conversations, and we have folks who have expertise in those other governance groups, as many of you know, because you serve on a lot of them. So the next slide is just some suggestions. I didn't call these norms because you have a norms document, which is also on your SharePoint site, but these are some suggestions how to think about what to do in meeting. And in meeting, elevate issues and challenges, engage with the presentations. I've got the hats over here. I love these hats. Sometimes you're a chef, right? And you're like putting all the ingredients in the mix. Sometimes you're, we'll call this, a magic maker. I won't use other words here, but like that sort of hat with the pointy, the witch's hat, so to speak, you are making magic in the work that you do, or it probably feels that way sometimes with how challenging things can be. The next one looks like a piece of pizza is actually a party hat. We should celebrate when things go well. We need that momentum in our system, and things are going well every single day. You're bringing up bright spots to the meeting. What do we do with those bright spots? How do we learn from them? Who do we take them back to? And then a little snow hat for the Kansas winters, and also because sometimes you just have to get through it, right? Like sometimes you just have to, wear the hat that gets you to Monday, so to speak, or gets you to Friday, I guess. And as Maritas mentioned earlier, we made it to Friday. So engage with your work groups, use those hats and think about what hat am I wearing today and how can I not do all the things? How can I play the one role that I need to play and set yourself up for in between meeting work? So between meetings, you have day jobs. You come here and you give us 3 hours of your month, which is fantastic. Many of you are giving more with in between work. We're not asking you to do too much because of that. You are giving a lot of time here. We want you to be present and strategize in these spaces. But in between meetings, just be that bridge or connection point. Be the bridge between you and your community, or the panel and your community, the panel and your organization. Take things back and forth. Even just forwarding some of the things Lindsay sends to you is being that bridge and being that connection. So it doesn't have to be an extensive amount of work. Just observe and listen for new ideas. You are on other work groups. You are doing amazing things within your organization and within your community. What are you hearing and seeing that you want to elevate and you want to bring back to this group? So just use those passive listening skills that my 9-year-old girls seem to not be very good at using. And then the last thing is use the SharePoint. It is a wealth of resources, and it only is a wealth of resources as people add to it and people use it. So when you think about what has been done on the panel prior to me coming onto the panel, that information lives on the SharePoint site. And it's there not just for those in the moment working groups, it's there as posterity. It's there to show that there are very few new ideas. There are always like folks who have tried things before. There are lessons from other states. That information can live on that SharePoint site and can be a resource for you. Off to the side, I did put a couple just prompts as you're thinking about, okay, you talked about hats, Sarah, you're saying a lot of words. What should I be thinking about when I hear Stephanie's presentation later today? Just some prompts for you. What questions do I have? And you don't have to say these things out loud. You don't have to put them in the chat, but they're just a way for you to think about as you're absorbing the information. Where do I take this? Do I take this anywhere? What relevance is this to me in my work or me in my community? And who else do I know that may be impacted by or connected to? And again, in between those meetings, it's just passing information along can be game changer, right? You don't have to be the expert on what you're absorbing. Let the person who's talking be the expert and you be the one who connects that person to your community or to your organization. I know everyone who presents on the panel will be more than happy to come present to other groups as well. All right, Lindsay, I think I have one more slide here. Oh, so I mentioned a little bit about the SharePoint site. So these are just a list of some of the supports that exist out there to help you do all those things that I just talked about. Agendas and notes are on the SharePoint site. Prior work group notes and resources are on the SharePoint site. Your agenda and resource submission form. Have something you want to add to the agenda? There's a form on the SharePoint site for you to do that. The governance chart that I mentioned earlier is on the SharePoint site. But it's your site. What else would you like? What else would you like to see? What other quick links would you like access to? Definitely let Lindsay know and she can populate those things out. It's got to be useful for you or it's just sitting out there taking up space in the interwebs. The All In for Kansas Kids strategic plan, which I'm going to keep talking here in a little bit about, just to touch on, that can also be a resource. It is the collection of the work of our entire system written into a document that helps clarify what's next. And it's a 5-year strategic plan, so it's got a lot of legs to it. I'll talk about that here in a minute, but it can be a resource if you're wondering, what do I do with this thing? How do I process this information? The plan can provide some words. It can help you provide words to your organization or to your community. Then I have 2 things here in green that we're going to try one today, a post-meeting survey. Again, they're your meetings. Lindsay and I have talked about like, how do we make these meetings meaningful to you? How do we know they're meaningful to you? So we're going to ask you a couple like easy questions at the end of today's meeting. What part did you enjoy? What level of relevance was the meeting for you? What topics would you like to discuss? There's no right or wrong answers. If you don't want to fill it out, it's okay. You don't have to fill it out. It's not certainly required. It's not mandatory. It's just a way to help shape these spaces and times to make the most of what you want to talk about and what you hope to get out of being a panel member when you applied to be on it. The reflection cheat sheet, this is just another idea that maybe we'll try if folks are interested, but those questions that I asked, those hats that I noted in the last couple slides, would it be nice to just have a little card up available for you? Again, you're in lots of meetings doing lots of work in these 3 hours on the third Friday of every month. What are the things to be thinking about? So those are just some options. And Lindsay is available for any other ideas that you have. How else can we support you in your role on the panel? Because we're very grateful, as Brenda said in the outset, that you are here and giving your time and your energy and your expertise. So how else can we support you? So those are just my little tips and tricks and ways that supports are available to you. So Brenda, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a great reminder. And a tip, please check out that SharePoint folder because it is a wealth of resources. And also, you're going to want to know now if you're having any access issues. So if for some reason you're not able to access the SharePoint file, test it out now rather than the 2 minutes before your work group meeting and you're trying to get the notes. So check it out now. So Sarah, I invite you to share with us this new strategic plan. I feel like this is kind of the unveiling. We're excited to hear. Tell us about it.
Thanks, Brenda. Very happy to. So again, this is talk about hats. I'm going to put on the hat that I have in supporting the system with the preschool development grant. So Lindsay, you can go ahead and go to the next slide and we can just dive right into it. So you'll see on here, I think it's the fourth bullet, deliverable for PDG B5 planning grant. We are acronym alphabet soup in our early childhood system. PDG stands for Preschool Development Grant. It is not about preschool. It's just the name that the feds gave it when they started the program back in 2018. So PDG, as we lovingly refer to it, it's all about systems building. That's the purpose of the grant. And we have been awarded 3 grants to date, 3 PDGs to date, and each PDG asks us to do a needs assessment and a strategic plan. So the needs assessment was completed back in, I think, February or April. That is available on the Children's Cabinet website. And the strategic plan is also a deliverable of that grant, in addition to just being good practice, right? It's good for us to have a strategic plan for our system. It's also a grant deliverable. And so that is the funding source behind it. That's also the timing of why the plan is created when it is, because of the funding source that helps drive it. So just to note that. It's a 5-year time horizon. We had a state directors team meeting yesterday and just talked about this work is long work. And we talked about the batons and passing the baton to the next. There's 111 actions inside the strategic plan. There's no way to get them all done in 1 year. And so it is a 5-year time horizon. It does require us to prioritize. It does require us to bring everybody into the mix and help implement. As I mentioned, it's responsive to the 2024 needs assessment. So that needs assessment was comprehensive. It looked at our entire system. It looked at our programs and services. It looked at the way we are structured. It looked at the way we are funded. It looked at how we support the workforce. So I would encourage you to look at the needs assessment, to use that as a resource. We certainly did when we created the strategic plan. We also had several different engagement conversations, conversations with different governance groups. We brought the draft of the strategic plan to you all who were on the panel back in the spring. We brought it to the State Home Visiting Leadership Team. We brought it to the Governor's Public Health Conference, the Kansas Early Childhood Conference. We took it to several different places, trying to make sure we're getting it right and getting the priorities right based on what you all who are doing the work in the system need and want. It is available online. Lindsay, I don't know if we can put the link in the chat from where it's at on the cabinet site. It was just approved by the Children's Cabinet Board as our Early Childhood Advisory Council, our state's ECAC. At their meeting 2 weeks ago, I believe. So it's formally approved now, and we're just starting the work of posting it and getting it out there for folks to see. I'm going to go through very high level today, and then we'll have time in September if you all would like to dive deeper into what it means for you, and you can ask questions and you can, kind of think out loud about your reactions to it, because I know you've not had time to look at it. So not expecting any of that to happen today. Really want to just give you an overview of what you're going to see in the document that Lindsay has linked. You can go to the next slide, Lindsay. Just a quick overview of what you're going to see. There's a vision. Every child thrives is our vision. That has been the vision for many, many years now. It's nice to have a vision that is succinct and also consistent and evergreen. There's a commitment statement from the 4 state agencies who really are the leads of distributing and administering at least federal funding that comes down and some state funding that comes down for early childhood. Does not mean that they are the only ones responsible for our early childhood system, as evidenced by all of you representing communities and organizations doing amazing work. But it is important for us to see that our 4 state agencies, that's the Department of Education, that's the Children's Cabinet, Department for Health and Environment, Department for Children and Families, which I know we have reps here from those agencies, just saying, this is the North Star for our system. A background, you'll see a little bit. This is also information you can use as you're talking to folks who may have less familiarity with why is early childhood so important. We're going to give you some data points to share. The importance of the first 5 years of a child's life. We could argue the first 1,000 days within that first 5 years, right? Like so much good stuff happens in those first 5 years, and the data is you cannot argue with the data, and very significant long-term research on the positive impacts of positive early childhood spaces for kiddos, and that's where we want to start. That's what we want to produce. What do our youngest Kansans need? We'll go back a little bit inside the strategic plan and give you some of those key needs assessment findings, so you don't have to have both documents up all the time. You can carry that strategic plan and pull out the data point you need to make your point as you advocate for the work you're doing. And then also, what do we want for our children's future? So a little bit of why it's important, what we're dealing with now, and where we want to go for our kiddos, so everyone can kind of be on the same page. And then we dive into the plan itself, and it's organized into 3 pillars is the phrase we're using. That is the early childhood ecosystem, the workforce, and children and families. So it's just a way to organize all of the different goals and actions. Within those 3 pillars, there's 15 goals. Within those goals, there are, like I said, 111 actions. There's some indicators of progress. As I mentioned to state directors yesterday, these 111 actions are not separate than the work you're already doing. It's just codifying many of the goals you already have. So it's not layering on top. It's really just showing alignment with the work you all are doing at the local level and the work that the state agency folks and programs are doing. So don't look at that as like next on your to-do list. It's really just codifying in a holistic and succinct way what the whole system is attempting to do on a day-to-day basis. Go to the next slide, Lindsay. I also wanted to note, this is something new we put into the strategic plan this year, which is we use the word system and ecosystem. We kind of throw that around as if everyone knows what that means. And turns out Kansas is a little bit unique in how we define our early childhood ecosystem. There are many states where it is really childcare focused, or it's really just those who are serving the kiddo who's birth to 5. But in Kansas, we really believe that it's all of the other pieces and parts. It's our home visitors, it's our maternal health folks who are helping it when moms are thinking about getting pregnant. We are talking about the supports a parent or a caregiver, perhaps it's an adoptive or a kinship family who is supporting a kiddo, in addition to all the spaces where a child is being served. And that could be in our early intervention services. It's our trainers who are making sure that our workforce is equipped to provide those high quality supports. It's our preschools who are connected and supporting that jump to kindergarten. It's all of you who are doing amazing work for all the kids, kids who have special healthcare needs, children who have a developmental delay. We acknowledge that this is the universe of early childhood ecosystem in Kansas. So we spell that out a little bit more. So I would highlight this page in the plan when you get a chance to look at it. We try to even list some of the job titles and some of the programs that come with this ecosystem. It is by no means comprehensive. It's just to start to get people seeing that one of the bits of feedback we heard is it's more than just childcare. Childcare is incredibly important. There's no question about that. The ripple effects that high quality childcare and childcare workers who are making a high living wage, the positive impacts of that. And also, we have other folks in our system who are doing similar work in similar challenging situations. So, just wanted to note what that is and give you all a chance to highlight that page for you and make sure that you're looking at that, and would love your feedback too if you feel like something is missing even from the way we have described it. This is a busy slide. You have the slide deck, or I believe you will get the slide deck on the SharePoint site. So I won't go into this, and you'll have the plan and you'll have a chance to look at it. But our ecosystem, what's included in that? It's state local collaboration. It's not just state agencies operating over here, it's the local and the state. Kansas is a local control state. Our locals are solving problems at the lowest level, and that is what we want. And they are in tune to the unique challenges of their community, and we want to support that and have good state local collaboration. Communities are connecting families to the right resources at the right time. We call this no wrong door, which means that no matter what door a family walks into at the local level, that they can get connected to the service that they need. Use data and expand the resources. That's always the biggest challenge. We need more of things. How do we get more of things creatively? Our workforce, this has been something this panel group has talked about for many, many months, I would say even years, which is compensation, 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 sustainability. We do not have enough workers to fill the spaces that we currently have. There are lots of reasons why that is the case. It is a nuanced challenge. It's not the same in every community. But there's things we've got to be able to do to ensure that we want every child to thrive. We need high quality, respected workers who are there providing those services. And then children and families. You'll see a lot in this pillar around well-being and basic needs. That sometimes it can be a luxury to participate in the early childhood system when you don't have housing, when you don't have consistent access to food and to transportation. Many of you who are providing services in rural communities know how challenging transportation can be to get a family from point A to point B. And that is part of our work in the early childhood system. That is not just the Department of Transportation's job to figure that out. It is the work of the early childhood system. We want to equip families to have access to those resources and to make the best decisions possible. All right, Lindsay, next slide. The next two slides, and I won't belabor these either, we try to take the strategic plan and say, okay, now what? Here's the so what, what's the now what? What can you do? What are different pathways that you can explore? There are state level opportunities. You all are a prime example of serving on the panel. That's a pathway to action. We also have lots of different, as I mentioned, governance groups. There's a couple listed here. There's also a ton of work happening locally. Many of you are on a parent engagement group. Many of you are leading local childcare coalitions. I know Tanya Kane from Childcare Aware is on here. They've done a tremendous job of supporting and establishing those structures at a local level. We also have local ICCs or interagency coordinating councils. So very diverse group of folks, and our chambers, right? We have early childhood champions, not just in the traditional social services program space, but also in our for-profit and our business space. How do you take action in those spaces or make those connections? And then the next slide just touches on a couple ways to think about, we need more. More usually cost has a price tag associated with it. How do we maximize those investments in early childhood? Strengthening public-private sector partnerships, which we're going to talk a little bit about in a work group. Flexibility and federal funding to optimize impact. There isn't a ton, but I know our federal partners, at least on our PDG, are asking questions. What do you guys need at the state level? How can we support you? So federal partners are listening, and they provide a lot of funding and resources. So that's a way for us to optimize impact. And then how can the state help boost the local? How can the state do some things that incentivizes or encourages local level investment? Again, not everything has to be within the social service space. How can we leverage local resources that maybe come from philanthropy or maybe come from businesses or other civic approaches and methods? So just the ways to think about as you walk through the plan. These are some of the highlights of what to look for. And then the last slide, this is just to help bridge between the existing work that the panel has done. So I talked about the plan doesn't sit on the side. It's not independent of the work you're already doing, even the panel work that is already happening. You'll see here all of these work groups from the panel they were represented in the original strategic plan in 2020, and they are in multiple places in the new plan as well in terms of the spirit and the work that the work groups are doing. So lots of continuity, alignment is the word of the day, but it's there and we hope that you'll take a look and we'll hope you'll see that. So I think I need a drink of water, Lindsay, but I will certainly take any questions if folks have them.
Thank you, Sarah. That was a wonderful overview of the strategic plan, which I know is going to inform our work groups that we're going to be talking about later today. So thank you for dropping the link to the strategic plan, and people can start to take a peek at that if they haven't already. So thank you, Sarah, for that. We will now turn our attention to the workforce study, which is, I believe, pillar number 2 as the strategic plan. So I would like to introduce Stephanie Parks and Patty Pichelle with Kansas Child Care Training Opportunities to tell us a bit more about the Career Pathway Comprehensive Workforce Study.
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Parks, and I am the Associate Director for the Career Pathway, and I work with Patty Peschel and at Casito. Let's see, make sure. There we go. Okay. All right, so the Kansas Early Childhood Care and Education Comprehensive Workforce Study was funded by federal recovery dollars through the Kansas Department for Children and Families, DCF. And as a part of the implementation of the Career Pathway and part of the All In for Kansas Kids strategic plan, the Casito undertook this study to establish a baseline understanding of the early childhood workforce. The Office of Educational Innovation and Evaluation, OEIE, at Kansas State University also collaborated with us to carry out this 2-part study. Next slide, please. We were particularly interested in learning from both professionals who make up the current workforce and those who left the field. And to that end, data were collected from both current and former professionals in the workforce. And this study represents the voices of nearly 6,000 early childhood care and education professionals from all 105 counties in Kansas. And members of the workforce shared their lived experiences by completing an online survey and participating in 39 focus groups across the state. For our purpose today, we'll take a look at data from 4,696 people who are currently working in the early childhood workforce, and later reports will summarize information from those who have left the field. Today, however, we will offer a brief overview of the results with 4 key findings and potential recommendations or opportunities noted based on these findings. Next slide, please. Because there is no single setting designated as the only environment where early childhood care and education takes place, members of the workforce reported the various settings where their work occurs. And to guide this process for identifying these settings, participants reviewed a list of options, and they were asked to identify all the settings where they work. And we have organized their responses into 5 categories of settings. These settings were created to capture this mixed delivery system of ours. So the first you can see there is the green arrow, and that was early intervention, and that includes 260 people that are home-based providers. That includes Part C and PAT, for example. The second is the bright blue arrow, and that is family childcare, represents 1,300 folks. The third arrow is our biggest arrow with it's the navy color with private childcare, child center-based settings, which provide faith-based programs, centers, private preschool, drop-in, Mother's Day out, Parents' Day out. And then the fourth group there is the maroon arrow, which is, we called other, very creatively, other early childhood settings. And that's 488 folks that are in that group. Those programs are more federally funded, like Head Start, or publicly funded related to school districts, that kind of thing. So kind of this other group out there. And then the final arrow is a very small group of other early childhood professionals in settings where they're still part of the workforce, but there's not direct interaction with children or families. And so this is a very small group of 39 folks that we couldn't fit somewhere else. And those would be licensing specialists, coaches, trainers, higher education faculty, that kind of thing. Next slide, please. This slide is another view of these 5 groups, and you can see what percentages of people are represented in those groups. And you can see the 2 biggest settings were private center-based settings, the Navy one, and FCC, which is 29%. Next slide. In terms of demographics, 96% of professionals in the workforce are female, no surprise there. 10% are, 96 and 87.4% are white non-Hispanic, 10% identified as Hispanic or Latinx. Next slide, please. When asked about their reasons for entering the field across all of the settings, ECC professionals rate their passion for working with children by far as the highest reason, and that's that yellow arrow there. Family childcare professionals, the next clump of that bright blue bar, the tall blue bar, their reasons were higher when asked about wanting to care for their own children in their own home. So that was another tall reason for that specific group. But this reason was rated much lower for other professionals in other settings. Next slide, please. This is a quote from a person in a focus group. This person said, "An EC pathway course in high school is actually how I got into it. Yeah, I worked for a preschool in town, and that's where I found that I loved being with children." Next slide, please. We also ask people how often they think about leaving the profession. Recruitment and retention are both really important. So we ask people how often they think about it. And the gray parts of the bars are never or rarely. The light blue is sometimes, and dark blue is often or always. Across all of these settings, 53% answered never or rarely. Next slide, please. Given these findings, our opportunity here is to start recruitment in CTE in middle school and high school, career and technical education programs in middle and high school, giving students opportunities to interact with young children and fall in love with this field, like those of us probably, no doubt, on this call. We also want to expand apprenticeships and mentorships opportunities. Those will be explored later on in as later reports. Also, it's important for us to recruit Black, Indigenous people of color into the field to ensure the workforce reflects the diversity of children that they serve in Kansas. Next slide. Second key finding, as Sarah mentioned earlier, is all about compensation and benefits. Overall, 40 to 50% of ECCE professionals have a salary under $25,000 a year. The median wage for all occupations in Kansas is $42,000. Next slide, please. When we break this data out into our 5 settings, you can see the first 2 bar clusters are below $25,000. 10% of respondents are earning $50,000 or more. And remember the gray bars that are tall there, that represents just 39 people total of all of our respondents. We also found that 20% of participants reported working a second job. Sobering findings. Next slide, please. This graph depicts age organized by our 5 settings. And the darker the pink or the fuchsia color, the older the respondent is. 64% of our family childcare is 41 or older, if you look at the longer dark pink sections. We also asked about benefits, and only 6% of family childcare professionals have health benefits through their work. 5% have a 401k. FCC professionals urgently need our support, particularly in securing adequate salaries, benefits, and retirement preparation, as many face retirement with minimal savings. So they're skewed older and yet have less benefits and savings. Next slide, please. This was from a focus group participant who said this. I know someone who had to leave the field because she needed to do something different for her next 10 years for retirement purposes. And so she needed to find a job she could build some retirement benefits. Okay, next slide. These are sobering findings, but probably not surprising to you. So what is the opportunity? Prioritize a locally assessed living wage as an essential component for building and sustaining our ECCE system. Offer retirement preparation specifically to address the unique challenges of family childcare professionals. Next slide, please. Let's talk about preparation and advancement in the field. We are a diverse group when it comes to highest education level. I included a table kind of at the bottom. This is a hard graph to interpret, but I included a table across the bottom of the graph that might be easier to understand. For example, in the table, if you look at family childcare, that bright blue row, 2/3 of family childcare professionals have some college experience, 2-year, 4-year, or advanced degrees. Early intervention and other settings, that maroon one, each have at least 15% with advanced degrees. Next slide. We asked how interested people are in advancing their degree. And overall, nearly 2/3 showed a moderate to extreme interest in advancing their degree. However, focus groups were divided and citing lack of return on investment of time and money. And the biggest barriers identified across the survey and confirmed in our focus groups are finances, time, and logistics. So people talked about how advancing their degree or finishing their degree and or additional certifications puts a significant strain on individuals and their families. in terms of logistics. They shared stories of people not having access to the internet or a laptop, or have to take courses on their phone. Online college courses may not be good for some, especially in they may be good for some in rural Kansas, for example, but it may not align with some folks and their learning styles. So people were very split and very divided. And that is important for us to take into account, that not one size fits all for our workforce. Next slide, please. Here are some more quotes from those focus groups. The reason I did go back to school to get my bachelor's is because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, for one, and for two, to prove to my children that you're never too old to learn. The next one says, I get emails, I feel like every other day, about Casito class or a free training here, or my surveyor sending me this. It's pretty easy to find training, but as far as advancing my degree, I've only probably had one course that's been like, here, you can take this course and advance your degree. Important information for us to hear. Next slide. Our opportunity here is that higher education and organizations that offer professional development must tailor our courses and education to meet the needs and the unique demands of this mixed delivery system. Secondly, we need to provide more scholarships to trainings, to support training and certifications into advancing degrees. And people need support and encouragement to advance their degrees and their careers. Next slide. Our fourth and final key finding is in reference to the entities across our ECC system that are designed to provide coaching and supports to providers. 1/3 to 2/3 of ECC professionals reported never consulting with 8 of the 9 entities that offer support. Those are those darkest maroon colors. Next slide. So we have an opportunity to intentionally build a more cohesive and collaborative cross-sector system of supports to promote professional preparation and advancement in the workforce. Next slide, please. So what's next? This overview report is just the beginning in a series of policy briefs and webinars, publications, presentations that we're planning. Within this series, we'll be diving deeper into the results and analyzing the data further to then disseminate on topics such as implications for higher education and professional development, provider stress and well-being, retention. We want to look hard at those 800 respondents who have left the field and what they are saying, and lessons we can learn from them, and much, much more. Next slide, please. For those of you who participated in the study or helped contribute to the study in some way, thank you once again for your dedication and your contribution. We encourage your questions and your engagement. If you're interested in learning more, you can go to our website or to download this report with the findings that I shared today. And then stay tuned for more reports and upcoming policy briefs and webinar opportunities to learn more. We are open to some questions or any thoughts or ideas, or if you and your organization have need for some specific data, or you're wondering if we collected data on a topic, please contact us. We want to be able to disseminate and share this information and these results.
Stephanie, thank you so much. There was a lot of information there, and I suspect you just touched the surface of some of these findings, just a little bit.
Just a tiny tidbit, yes.
Yeah, wow, like a little teaser, a trailer for the survey report. So thank you for that. And I imagine there are people on today's panel that will want to know more. And so thank you for sharing your information. So anyone can get a hold of you. I'm sure you're willing to give more presentations if needed and to dive in deeper to the data. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Casito is a wonderful partner in this work. Thank you, Stephanie, for your work on that. Okay, I don't think we had any questions. I'm looking at Lindsay. Do we have any questions for Stephanie?
I don't have any that have like come in through the chat, but
Okay.
certainly great to offer up space if people
Yes.
have any reflections or questions or anything like that.
Absolutely. Feel free to raise your hand if you have any reflections or comments for Stephanie about that information. Maritas does.
Stephanie, this is Maritas Altuna. My question is, have you shared this information with other state agencies?
Yes, just yesterday we started talking. We shared this with state directors, and we have plans to offer webinars. So stay tuned; they're coming.
Thank you.
Great question, Maritas, getting that information out. Do others have questions for Stephanie or comments? Okay. So I know we've heard a lot of information, and I'm asking you to hold this in your head because we're going to be moving into work groups in a little while, and I think some of this is going to be informing those work groups. So just a thought. All right, but before we get to that, I do want to share with you that this is National Breastfeeding Month, and I could not talk to you in August without mentioning that August is National Breastfeeding Month. So it's an exciting moment in lactation land. It's an exciting moment in Kansas. Go ahead and advance to the next slide, Lindsay. Thank you. It's exciting because in Kansas, we are celebrating a significant increase in breastfeeding rates related to the latest data released from the Center for Disease Control. We are now 4th in the nation in the rate of infants exclusively breastfeeding at 3 months and 5th in the nation for exclusive breastfeeding at 6 months. And just if you let that sink in for a moment, this is reflecting the hard work of this ecosystem for early childhood because it takes all of us. It takes childcare providers to support breastfeeding families. And over 90% of families in Kansas do choose to breastfeed. So this is definitely becoming, and it is the norm in our state. But not only are they choosing to breastfeed at birth, but now we're seeing rates that they are continuing to breastfeed upwards of 6 months and a year. And hopefully, Lindsay, can you drop in the link to the state of breastfeeding? Or I can do that here in the chat. Sorry, I'm not good at linking, and there we go. Gotcha. So this is the state breastfeeding report that has all of this data. If you would like to dive into it in greater detail, but I just want you to take a moment to celebrate that we are doing really well here in Kansas, in large part to the work that's being done by people on this panel. Next slide. The governor proclaimed August Kansas Breastfeeding Month in recognition of the national measure. And so you can see some people that you may know in this picture. As I said, it takes everyone. Next slide. So National Breastfeeding Month, just to give you a quick overview, if you're not familiar with this, it starts with World Breastfeeding Week, the first week of August. Some of you in your local communities may have seen events that were being held on the local level from your state health department or your local health department, or maybe your WIC agency on the local level. They really celebrate that first week as World Breastfeeding Month, World Breastfeeding Week. Sorry, next slide. But as I said, it is an entire month. And we recognize that there are groups, if you look at the state report, including here in Kansas, that do not breastfeed at the same rate as everyone. So there are dedicated weeks for particular populations so that they're able to elevate the support that they need. So we just wrapped up Indigenous Milk Medicine Week just a couple of days ago, and we are now in the middle of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Week. So every week there is a new theme. You may be seeing it on social media. Next slide. The last week of the month is always reserved for Black Breastfeeding Week. And then we have a new week. We now have so many weeks, we are spilling on into September. We are now have the Workplace Lactation Week. And this is kind of in recognition of the new federal laws. I keep saying new, even though they're now over a year old. The workplace lactation laws that were passed on the federal level to continue to raise awareness about workplace accommodations for breastfeeding families and how important that is. So there's now the first week in September, which coincides with Labor Day. It seems appropriate that we're talking about workplaces and lactation support. Next slide. And the 5th week is Latina Breastfeeding Week, and that is September 3rd through the 9th. A little bit of overlap with the other week, but this is the final wrap-up week for National Breastfeeding Month, is with Latina Breastfeeding Week. I am proud to say that here in Kansas, we have Lactancia Latina that is available for our Hispanic families that would like to connect with breastfeeding support. We also have Black breastfeeding coalitions in Kansas City, Wichita, and Topeka as well. So opportunities for connection there. And we do have an Indigenous breastfeeding coalition as well. So if you'd like to know more about those, feel free to reach out to me. But you may be wondering, what does all this have to do? Go ahead, Lindsay. What does all this have to do with the early childhood field? Well, child care providers are, as I mentioned earlier, an integral part to breastfeeding support. They play a vital role for caring for the breastfed infant. So many of you, hopefully all of you, are aware of this designation for the Breastfeeding Friendly Child Care Program. This designation is administered by Child Care Aware of Kansas. Big shout out to Chris Nicholson, who was part of the creation of this designation, and she reviews the applications. And our organization, the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition, actually helps to provide some technical support if there's some issues along the way. But I'm just going to walk you through really quickly what the designation is and tie it to the new regulations that are available for child care providers. So there are 5 criteria for the breastfeeding friendly child care program. And again, this can be home-based or centers either. Next slide. The very first criteria is to create a welcoming environment. And newsflash, this supports the new recommendations for the new child care licensing regulations is the word I'm looking for. So thank you to Jarvis and his team for including accommodating on-site breastfeeding for breastfeeding families. So not only is it part of this designation, but it is also part of the regulations that programs have to have a plan in place for if a parent wanted to sit down to breastfeed their own child, where would they do that? So that creating an environment, you don't have to have a separate space like is shown in this picture. They simply have to have an idea for where the parent can go. And then, of course, we have surrounded this by books and toys and imagery in the centers where they can say breastfeeding is the normal thing here. So we have lists of books and toys. Next slide. We also have window clings that are available for centers to put on their windows. Obviously, home-based wouldn't be doing that, but we do have the We Care for the Breastfed Baby. And once they achieve the designation, Child Care Aware will send another window cling that has that state of Kansas outline. So they can proudly display to the public their commitment to supporting breastfeeding families. Next, policies. A good designation would not be complete without having a policy in place for infant feeding. And most childcare programs have an infant feeding policy, but if they don't, or if they're looking to make sure it includes a robust portion about breastfeeding, there are policy templates available. And these are available on the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition website and also through Child Care Aware as well. So 2 different places. Next slide. Parent information. That's another part of the criteria to make sure that parents see and receive information about how to support breastfeeding. These photos that you're seeing in these on this slide come from programs here in Kansas. And I thought there were very creative ways of displaying some of the breastfeeding material. And of course, all this is available through the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition if anyone is looking for materials, or the local health departments are also have access to these same materials and would be a good resource. Next slide. And these are just some of the images of the materials that you saw in those photos. We can go through the next two slides pretty quickly, just a little show and tell, some of the things that some programs have had available for parent education. What you're seeing there in the black images is looks like a luggage tag, but it's given to parents to put on a breast pump bag to remind them of milk storage guidelines. And then on the back, you see a QR code to all the pumping tips that we have collected from parents over the years. So it can be a great way for parents to get tips. Next slide. Staff education. This is where we really love to celebrate our partnership with Casito. We, since 2013, have been offering a 2-hour training for childcare providers on how to support the breastfeeding mother and family. And we do this in person. We've been doing this with Casito every month for free for over 10 years. And the latest numbers have shown that we have now educated over 6,600 childcare providers in those 10 years. So I'm really excited to see those numbers increase. And we are now offering that in Spanish. So we have heard that childcare providers want more materials and trainings in Spanish. So with support from Childcare Aware, we've had that translated, and we have a lactation consultant, a Spanish-speaking lactation consultant that teaches that. Next slide. These are just a few remarks that we have received from childcare providers when we have offered this course. We ask them to give some reflections at the end of the course, and we have learned a lot about what has surprised them and what are some of the things that they found to be really nuggets in this class. And so we just wanted to share some of those highlights with you. But I think a lot of them were unaware of some of the milk storage guidelines, for example. And we hear time and time again, if I had only known that when I had my own child, or if I had only known that when my daughter had children, or when my neighbor was struggling. So we recognize we're not just educating the childcare force, we're educating neighbors and family members as well. Next slide. Employee support, this is the last of the 5 criteria, but for any childcare program that has employees, we want to make sure that they're supporting their breastfeeding employees. And this aligns with those federal laws. And so nothing new here, nothing above and beyond what is normally required, but we want to make sure that the childcare program, if they have employees, have accommodations for their own employees. Next slide. And there's the door hanger that makes any room a lactation room, as I like to say. And the next slide. Thanks. So I have 2 ideas for you if this is intriguing to you and you want to do more to support breastfeeding in your community or in your childcare programs or even home visiting programs. We do have a childcare section that meets every other month, and Chris Nicholson is the chair for that. This section is really dedicated to the intersection of childcare and infant feeding and breastfeeding, and what can we do? And there have been really amazing tools created by this section. One that I think really stands out in my mind is a handout, a checklist on emergency preparedness for the breastfed infant. Think about that. In the child care program, childcare providers have to have an emergency preparedness plan, but oftentimes it assumes the infant is formula feeding, and we're not having a plan for the breastfed child. So if you're wondering, I wonder what that would look like, check out the resources on our website for that plan. The next page, next slide. Local breastfeeding coalitions is another opportunity to get connected with local level work. As Sarah said, we know all of this work is happening on the local level, so we have local breastfeeding coalitions that you can also connect with as well. I think that's the last one. Thank you. And there's my contact information if anyone would like to learn more. So thank you for allowing me to share about National and Kansas Breastfeeding Month. And that is something that is, like I said, is happening right now. And these are ways that you can support and include breastfeeding support. All right. Next slide, Lindsay. All right. So we are getting prepared for work group discussions that are going to be happening after we formally adjourn today's meeting. And I just want to pull up my notes here to make sure that I get this all straight, because we know that there are many of you on today's call that you have just joined the early recommendations panel. And we also have returning members who have been part of work groups in the past. So we want to take today's time for work groups to kind of refocus and decide if there are maybe some new topics that we want to do. But before we break into the work groups, we want to give you a quick reminder of the overall objective and purpose of these work groups. So as you saw in Sarah's presentation for the strategic plan, it's going to take all of us to get those 111 action plans. That I'm still stuck on the 111. That's amazing. But yeah, we have a lot to choose from, right? And like you said, Sarah, we are already doing this work, but it's going to take all of us to do this. And we need to bring all of our hats to the table as well, along with our colleagues and other subject matter experts as well. So it's going to take all of us to do this. And it's important to understand the charge of the work groups. The work groups do not have to have just one marker of success. It's not that every work group has to create a recommendation. That could be possible. There was one work group last year that did, but there were other work groups that did equally important work by simply increasing overall awareness about a topic or elevating concerns that are happening in the community. And others were working, and you'll dive into a topic only to realize that there are others that might be needing to lift up this work, and we need to pass the baton to someone else as well. So I think it's important to know that these work groups don't have a single goal. They land on any of these: a recommendation, identifying existing efforts, or increasing knowledge and awareness on a topic, or making connections to others. So the goals for today, as we go into the work group for today's meeting is going to be different than what we're going to see in the future. We're going to be dividing into two work groups to do some brainstorming of issues and challenges, and to become familiar with how these work groups actually operate. So today's meeting the work groups for today are going to be different than what we may have experienced in the past and what we're going to be doing in the future. Okay, next slide. So these two groups for today is going to be discussion group number 1 is going to be talking about locally driven solutions for local challenges and diverse partnerships. So you will see that if you were part of a work group in last session around local zoning or family-friendly workplaces, we invite you to join work group number 1, or you'll be assigned to that work group. But if this is a topic, if you are new and you're interested in locally driven solutions or diverse partnerships, this would be the discussion group for you. The second discussion group is about workforce recruitment and retention. So those of you who were in the former panel work groups on compensation and retention, you'll be assigned to this work group. And again, new members, if this is something that you're interested in, we invite you to join this discussion group. So these are not meant to be new work groups. These are discussion groups. And we're going to see what comes out of today's discussion. Each work group will be assigned a facilitator. Sarah is going to be joining group number 2, and Rachel Sisson will be facilitating group number 1. So they'll be taking lots of notes, and we're going to see what surfaces in these discussions. Next slide. So the discussion prompts, just so you can begin kind of thinking about what it is that we're going to be talking about during these discussion groups. What are the bridges between these work groups and that strategic plan that you just heard about from Sarah? What topics might need additional focus? What new topics are there that's important to you? And is someone in your work group maybe going to surface as a co-lead? These work groups really work very much like by consensus, and it's a pretty light lift to be a co-lead to these. I would say probably the biggest skill set is being able to send an email or two and get your group organized. If you've mastered that, you have all the skills you need to be a co-lead to these organizations. It's really about keeping the group organized. And then our process for the next month's panel is if you have ideas for topics or issues, please email Lindsay before the September meeting, and then come to the September meeting prepared to talk about the topics that were generated in these discussion groups and get the new panel year of work groups off and going. So, are there any questions about today's work groups? And just to clarify the actual process here, we are going to wrap up the formal recommendations panel meeting in the next 15 or 13 minutes. And we're going to formally adjourn. And then we're going to take 10 minutes. You're going to stay on this Zoom, and you're going to come back after a 10-minute break to this same Zoom room and join your breakout groups. So we want to make sure that everybody stays here, don't exit the meeting, but stay put, and we're going to continue on into these discussion groups. All right, Lindsay, this is your chance to fix anything that I've said that was incorrect or confusing.
I can't think of anything. I feel like it was a great overview. Again, just a reminder that the groups today are not intended to be a permanent place where you will continue on for the rest of the panel year. This is just a discussion space to help determine what the next steps will be and what groups might emerge based on both past work and the strategic plan, and also all of your hats and ideas and information that you are bringing to this space as individuals. But I think you did a great job, Brenda. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Are there questions from members about what's going to happen next today? Because this is kind of a special discussion group that's following the meeting. Any questions? Okay, I must say that the discussion groups is a lot of work gets done in these meetings, so we really encourage you to join those and be active participants. And what comes out of that is always brought back to the recommendations panel during the formal portion of the meeting as well. So just wanted to let you know going forward that that's how what happens in those work groups are always brought back, and there are report outs every meeting about what was happening in those work groups. All right, let's go on to wrapping up the formal portion of the recommendations panel meeting. We always invite members on the panel to share bright spots. What is it that is exciting in your community, or what activities happening in your organizations that you would like to share? Feel free to raise your hand. Natalie?
Good morning. I just want to share with everybody that our KELS website has gone live. So if anyone wants to check out the Kansas Early Learning Standards website, you can go to kels.ksde.org, and you'll find the updated KELS and all the work that we've been putting in with extra resources and training and all the good things that have to do with KELS at that site.
Nice. That's exciting, Natalie. Thank you. And when you do share a bright spot like that, I see Lindsay dropped in the link. Those links will be in the minutes. So that will go out to those who are not able to be on today's meeting live. So thank you, Natalie. That's great news. Tanya.
Good morning, everyone. Tanya Kane with CalCareer Kansas. I have a couple bright spots. One, if you didn't get our email blast, we have hired a full-time executive director. Christy Smith will join us next week as our executive director. So we're excited to welcome her aboard. Again, she has worked for us before and not new to the early childhood field. Most of you probably know her. And then my second one is, I'll give a preview. We are getting ready to launch a business support center on our website. It should launch next week. This will be a spot where businesses who are interested in getting into the early childhood realm can go and get ideas. And more than just one idea. Most of them come in thinking they need to open a childcare center. It's too overwhelming, can't do it, I'm out. This will be ideas from, if you want to open a center, you need to start with KDHE. Here's how to contact them. Maybe you don't want to open a center. Maybe you just want to put money into a child dependent account, and here's ways to do that. Maybe you want to learn about the tax break. So here's the information. Here's how to go to that. So it's more of a list of options for businesses so they don't get so overwhelmed when they think about childcare. And then, of course, it connects them to our community outreach and engagement coordinators to also kind of help them, and can connect them to the community coalitions in their community, because we have a list of those for most counties on the state. So it's a way to get them into the early childhood realm when they're thinking about it for the employees without giving up before they even get started, because they're too overwhelmed. They don't know what they don't know. So that will launch next week, and I can share that link out with Lindsay so she can get it out to everybody. I should be able to share it at the end of today because we'll launch it next week. So.
Oh, that's exciting. Thank you, Tanya. Both of those pieces of news are exciting, but it's really nice to have a resource to be able to provide to employers as we're talking about those family-friendly workplaces, and we're talking about what you can do to support childcare, and now we're going to have a place that we can point them to for more information. So thank you for building that. Nice. Melissa.
Hello, everyone. Melissa Martin with Sparkwill. Last month, as a bright spot, I was able to announce we were going to be implementing 2 new Sparkwill early childhood programs, one of which was in Neodesha, but I could not yet announce the other. I can now, and it is in Chanute. So we are really excited about getting to move forward on that work. And I really don't have a link about that, so I won't post anything there, but wanted to share that second community.
Wonderful. Chanute's very fortunate. That's exciting. Great news. Great bright spots. Any others that people would like to share? Okay. If you have resources that you'd like to share, you can put them in the chat, and Lindsay will make sure that those are included in the notes as well. So we can do that. Does anyone have any more details that you would like to share about, if you have any questions about the SharePoint Hub? Remember I said check it out, make sure that you can access it. This is the time to do that. Please let Lindsay know if you're having any issues with that. Just a reminder about our upcoming meetings. The Early Childhood Recommendations Panel, as you know, meets on the 3rd Friday of every month at 9 o'clock. Please hold the entire time from 9 to 11:30 on your calendars. I know it may be tempting to go, oh, I don't know if I want to stay for the work group discussion, but I can tell you that's a very vital part of your role as a recommendations panel member, is to be an active participant in those work groups. And it's really hard to gather people between panel meetings. So the fact that we have this opportunity to stay together for the following hour is really valuable. So please block off that entire 9 to 11:30. And the Children's Cabinet will meet on October 4th. Those are always live streamed. And so we have the link there so that you can follow along with the good work that they're doing as well. All right, next slide, I think, is our formal adjournment for today's official meeting, and we will meet back here in 10 minutes. So it's 10:25. We will meet back here at 10:35 to begin the 2 discussion groups. Remember, discussion group number 1 is about local work, and discussion group number 2 is about workforces. And I'm sure we'll all be reminded when we rejoin. So feel free to turn your cameras off and your everybody's microphone is off. And do we have to have a motion to adjourn? I'm looking at Lindsay.
Nope, we should be good to go.
All right, we are officially adjourned. We'll see everyone back in 10 minutes. Thank you.